Hey there, Silver Recaps here. Watch out. The story begins with nursery school teacher Jenny, who is traveling to the countryside with her boyfriend Steve Taylor. They are heading to a remote lake called Eden, a place perfect for hiking and relaxation. As they reach the countryside, they realize they must pass through a dense forest to get to the lake. Making their way through, they come across a young boy named Adam sitting alone. Jenny attempts to talk to Adam, but he remains unresponsive. He seems preoccupied, collecting insects and taking notes. Despite Jenny's attempts to engage him, Adam ignores her completely. Choosing to move on, Jenny and Steve finally reach the lake and begin enjoying their time there. As they relax, they notice a group of boys approaching Adam, harassing him until he gets up and leaves. Ignoring the situation, Jenny and Steve continue their day, lying by the lake. Jenny dozes off for a while until the sudden barking of a dog wakes her. Curious, she walks toward the dog, realizing it belongs to the same boys who had bullied Adam earlier. They call the dog back as Steve, still in the lake, watches from a distance. Seeing this unfold, Steve grows irritated and decides to confront the boys. He tries to talk to them politely, hoping to diffuse any tension, but they respond with rudeness, mocking him instead. Steve doesn't want any unnecessary trouble ruining their trip, so he chooses to ignore them and walks away. However, the boys refuse to let it go. They continue their mischief, now using binoculars to spy on Jenny from afar. Jenny and Steve decide to spend the night by the lake. Steve sets up the tent while Jenny goes to gather firewood. As she collects the wood, she hears rustling sounds from the bushes. When she looks, no one is there. Later, as they sit by the fire, Jenny feels like someone is watching them, but they find no evidence of anyone nearby. The next morning, they wake up to find insects have ruined their food. They decide to go into town to buy supplies. As they start driving, the car suddenly stops due to a flat tire. Steve checks and finds a broken glass bottle near the wheel, causing the puncture. He realizes the group of boys from the lake might be responsible. Steve changes the tire and they continue to town. In town, Steve spots the boys riding bikes and tries to follow them, but they escape. Frustrated, he and Jenny stop at a restaurant. Steve tells the owner about the kids harassing them, but the owner dismisses his concerns. Feeling unwelcome, they leave. On their way back, Steve notices bicycles parked outside a house and recognizes them as the same ones the boys were using. He enters the house, but finds no one inside. Suddenly, the homeowner arrives. Steve, having no reason to be there, quickly escapes through a window and reunites with Jenny. They return to the lake, hoping to continue their trip. Steve goes scuba diving while Jenny naps by the shore. When Steve returns, he realizes his bag, which had their phones and car keys, is missing. Jenny and Steve search everywhere but cannot find the missing bag. They decide to return to the spot where they parked their car, only to discover that their car is also gone. Panic sets in as they struggle to understand what to do next. With no other option, they begin walking toward town. As they walk, they suddenly see their own car speeding straight toward them. They barely manage to jump out of the way in time. Steve looks up to see that the driver is Brett, the leader of the group of boys who had been harassing them. Brett smirks and drives away, leaving them stranded. With no transportation, Jenny and Steve decide to continue walking toward town on foot. As night falls, they spot the same group of boys in the woods, gathered together with Steve's stolen car keys and phone. Desperate, Steve approaches Brett and demands his belongings back. Brett refuses outright. Suddenly, Steve's phone starts ringing, drawing everyone's attention. Steve reaches for it, but Brett and his gang begin to taunt him. Tensions escalate quickly. Steve grabs for his phone, and a struggle breaks out. The boys surround him, pushing and shoving. One of them pulls out a knife. In the chaos, Steve instinctively grabs the boy's hand, trying to stop him. But in the struggle, the knife slips, accidentally stabbing Brett's dog. The dog collapses, and the entire group goes silent, watching in shock as their pet takes its last breath. Steve quickly snatches his car keys and sprints toward the vehicle, with Jenny right behind him. They jump inside and try to escape, but the car is stuck. Before they can react, the group of boys surrounds them, throwing rocks at the windshield. The glass begins to crack under the impact. Steve desperately tries to maneuver the car out of the trap, and just as it seems impossible, he finally manages to break free. He speeds toward the city, but with the cracked windshield blocking his view, he struggles to see ahead. Suddenly, the car crashes into a fallen tree, bringing them to a violent stop. Steve, injured and stuck in the wrecked vehicle, realizes he can't move. He turns to Jenny and tells her she has to run and get help. Jenny hesitates but knows she has no choice. She gets out of the car and runs into the woods, hiding as the boys close in on the crash site. She watches in horror as they approach the car. Unable to help, she stays hidden throughout the night, shivering with fear. At sunrise, Jenny cautiously makes her way back to the car, only to find it empty. Steve is gone. Bloodstains on the ground indicate he has been taken. Desperate, she follows the trail and soon discovers the terrifying truth. Steve has been captured by the gang and is being brutally tortured. He is tied up with barbed wire, his body covered in wounds. The boys, led by Brett, are laughing as they torment him, while one of the girls records everything on her phone. Jenny watches, her heart breaking, but she knows she is helpless. The group finally decides that they need to get rid of Steve permanently. Panicking, Jenny realizes she must act now. She steps out of hiding, revealing herself to the group. The moment they see her, the boys turn their attention toward her and start chasing her through the woods. This gives Steve the opportunity he needs. He struggles against the barbed wire, managing to free himself before making a desperate escape. Meanwhile, Jenny stumbles upon an old cabin in the woods. Inside, she finds a walkie-talkie, her only hope for calling for help. But as she grabs it, it slips from her hands, crashing onto the floor and breaking. Now completely stranded, she hears the sound of approaching footsteps. The boys have tracked her down. Jenny has no choice but to hide as they search for her. Just then, one of the boys receives a call. Steve has escaped. Frustrated and furious, they split up to hunt him down in the forest. With the gang distracted, Jenny seizes her chance and flees deeper into the woods, determined to survive. As Jenny stumbles through the forest, she suddenly finds Steve. He is severely injured but still alive. Desperate to save him, she helps him back to the abandoned cabin. However, it doesn't take long before the gang of kids arrives. They know someone is inside. Slowly, they enter the cabin, searching every corner. But to their confusion, they find it empty. Unbeknownst to them, Jenny had taken Steve beneath the cabin into the water, submerging themselves to stay hidden. Holding their breath, they remain still until the kids finally give up and leave. Once the coast is clear, Jenny emerges from the water, dragging Steve out and covering him with leaves to keep him hidden. She knows she needs to find help, so she sets off through the forest. As she runs, she spots a barbed wire fence surrounding the area. She follows along the fence, hoping to find an exit, but in her haste, she steps on a sharp wooden spike that pierces straight through her foot. The pain is unbearable, and she lets out a scream, alerting Brett and his gang to her location. Panicking, Jenny continues limping through the woods until she comes across Adam, the same boy she first encountered near the lake. Remembering that he seemed different from the others, she desperately asks him for help, hoping he will lead her to safety. Adam, without saying much, gestures for her to follow him. But after a short walk, he suddenly stops and begins playing on his phone. Noticing the phone, Jenny pleads with him to let her use it, but Adam refuses. She tries to grab it from him, and in that moment, she realizes the horrifying truth. Adam had just sent a message to Brett and the others, revealing her location. Within moments, the gang surrounds her. Jenny is now tied up with wooden logs stacked around her, just as they had done to Steve. Looking over, she sees that Steve has already succumbed to his injuries. Brett, smirking, lights the pile of wood on fire. Flames begin to rise, and the rope binding Jenny starts to burn away. Just before the fire consumes her, the rope weakens and she breaks free. She runs for her life, but Brett calls out, warning her that if she continues running, he will kill Adam. She hesitates for a moment, but before she can react, Brett ruthlessly kills Adam anyway. Horrified, Jenny sprints through the woods, eventually coming across an old map of the forest posted on a board. She quickly tears it down, trying to make sense of the layout. Suddenly, she hears the voices of the kids closing in. With no time to think, she spots a nearby dumpster and jumps inside, covering herself with trash to stay hidden. She holds her breath as Brett and the others search the area. After a tense moment, they move on, convinced that she has escaped elsewhere. Only when she is sure they are gone does she carefully climb out, determined to find a way out of this nightmare. Jenny finds a sharp piece of glass and wraps it in cloth, preparing to defend herself. As she moves cautiously, she spots one of Brett's friends watching her. Without hesitation, she attacks and kills him, then flees deeper into the forest. By nightfall, Brett discovers his friend's body and is filled with rage. One of his gang members, frightened by everything happening, decides to leave. Brett refuses to let him go, and when the boy insists, Brett beats him to death. Witnessing this, the only girl in their group panics and runs away. Meanwhile, Jenny finally reaches a road and sees a car approaching. Desperate for help, she flags it down. The driver picks her up, but instead of taking her to safety, he turns back toward the forest, saying he's looking for someone. Realizing something is wrong, Jenny seizes an opportunity. She throws the car into reverse, escaping just as the girl from Brett's gang runs onto the road trying to stop the vehicle. Not knowing who it is, Jenny runs her over and speeds away. Jenny eventually reaches a neighborhood where people are partying, but before she can ask for help, exhaustion and injuries make her collapse. When she regains consciousness, she finds herself inside a house, and soon realizes it's Brett's home. Brett calls his father and tells him that a girl has killed all of his friends. His father immediately understands the situation. Jenny pleads with the people in the house to call an ambulance, but no one helps. Realizing the danger, she locks herself inside the bathroom. Moments later, Brett's father and his friends break down the door and drag her out. Jenny desperately tries to explain the truth, but no one listens. Brett claims that Jenny and Steve killed his friends, twisting the story in his favor. Brett's father tells him to go upstairs while he locks Jenny inside the bathroom. Soon, Jenny's muffled screams echo through the house. Meanwhile, Brett finds his friend's phone, the one that had recorded everything, and deletes all the videos, erasing the evidence. He then puts on Steve's sunglasses, staring at himself in the mirror, adopting a new sense of power. With Brett victorious and Jenny's fate left unknown, the story ends on a chilling note.